The family debt, the price of trust and betrayal. You're not a real man. You're just a walking ATM. Ben's voice rang out through the room, cutting through the awkward silence. His words hung in the air like a weight, a cruel reminder of how little he thought of me. My brand new car, my pride and joy, was parked just outside the window. A car I'd worked hard for, earned every penny to afford. And there he was, sitting in the living room, making a joke about it like it was nothing more than a toy for him to use. I could hear the laughter, all of them joining in. My mother, my sister Laura, even the cousins. All of them, laughing at my expense. Ben was grinning, his eyes dancing with that smug, satisfied look he always wore when he got a rise out of someone. It wasn't the first time he'd done this, mocked me, humiliated me, but this time, it felt different. The joke was about me, sure. But it wasn't just about that moment. It was about everything that had led up to it. The constant taking. The constant asking. The lack of respect. But instead of raising my voice, instead of defending myself, I just stood there. I let out a short, hollow laugh. Nodded like I was in on the joke. And then I left. No words. No explanation. Just silence. I don't know why I didn't speak up. Maybe it was the years of swallowing my pride, letting it all slide because they were family. Maybe it was the overwhelming realization that nothing would change. Or maybe, just maybe, I was tired. Tired of being the one everyone leaned on. As I walked out the door, I heard my mother's voice calling after me, "Jason, where are you going? Don't be so sensitive." But I didn't answer. Not then. I didn't have the energy for it anymore. In that moment, I knew something had shifted inside me. Something was breaking. And it wasn't just a joke anymore. This time, it was personal. And it was the last time I would let them take anything from me. I've always been the one who worked hard. While the rest of the family enjoyed their weekends and took vacations, I spent my nights building my career, putting in the hours, and earning every penny. I wasn't born into wealth, but I sure as hell wasn't going to let that stop me. My success didn't come easy, but it was mine. And for years, I watched Ben, my brother-in-law, struggle. Not in a way that you'd call trying, though. No, Ben floundered from one get-rich-quick scheme to another, always promising that this time would be different. But it never was. And somehow, he always found a way to manipulate my family into bailing him out. Every single time. I remember one particularly reckless investment he made. He begged Laura, my sister, to refinance their house. He told her it was going to be the next big thing, that they'd be rolling in cash. She believed him, of course. She always did. I watched helplessly as she handed over more of their savings to him, time and time again. And every time, he came up with some new excuse when things went wrong. The projects failed, the investments tanked, and once again, it was my name on the line. Come on, Jason. It's family. We're in this together, right? Ben would say, his charm oozing as effortlessly as always. And they'd all believe him. They always did. When the car broke down, when the bills piled up, when the latest venture crumbled under the weight of its own lies, who did they turn to? Me. Always me. I was the one who gave them loans. I was the one who covered the bills. I was the one who took care of the mess that Ben always left behind, like an unspoken promise I'd made to be the family's ATM. But it was more than just the money. It was the damage to my own life. Every time I stepped in, I lost a little piece of myself. And yet, Laura defended him. His family, Jason. You can't just turn your back on him, she'd say, as if that made any of it okay. As if my success and my sacrifice meant nothing compared to Ben's lazy ambitions and empty promises. I was the one who was supposed to be the responsible one. I was the one who had worked for everything I had. But it didn't matter. Ben was the one everyone loved to protect. I was just the guy who had it all together, and they knew I would always be there to pick up the pieces. But at what cost? Before I go any further, before I tell you how things spiraled out of control, I want to connect with you, my amazing viewers. Have you ever felt like you were the one always stepping up for your family, only to be taken for granted? Drop your country's flag in the comments below, and let me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to fight for something you believe in, hit that like button, because trust me, this story is just getting started. The dinner was supposed to be a simple family gathering. Nothing special. Just the usual routine, everyone eating, talking, pretending everything was fine. But that night, it felt different. I had been waiting for this moment, the chance to show off my new Tesla. It wasn't just a car to me, it was a symbol of everything I'd worked for, everything I had sacrificed. But I knew better than to expect my family to just appreciate it. Every time I bought something nice, it seemed like the requests and expectations from them followed. And I was right. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Ben standing near the garage, casually eyeing my car. My new car. I should have known. The second I stepped inside, I heard it. "Hey, Jason, that your new ride?" Ben's voice called out from across the room, too casual, too confident. I forced a smile and nodded, trying to keep the conversation light. But I could feel it brewing inside me. The itch. The impatience. I wasn't ready to show off my success to them. Not after everything Ben had done. But there it was again. The comment. Ben grinned that annoying grin of his, walked right outside, and opened the door to the Tesla without even asking. "Don't worry, bro," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I'm just taking it for a spin. You're not a real man anyway. You're just a walking ATM, right? Always got the cash, always got the car. Let me show Sam how it drives." And there it was. That damn comment. ATM. The laughter came quickly, just like it always did. My mother, my sister, my cousins, all of them laughing like it was just another joke. They didn't see it. They didn't see how deeply it hurt. But I felt it. The sting. The weight of all the years of being taken for granted. For a moment, I stood there. The words didn't come. The anger didn't boil over. I didn't shout, I didn't lose my cool. I just felt tired. Something inside me snapped. I turned away from the door, walked into the house, grabbed my jacket, and walked straight to the front door. No goodbyes, no explanations. As I reached for my phone, I could hear Ben's voice from outside, still laughing, still poking fun. But this time, I didn't respond. Instead, I did something I should have done years ago. I called the insurance company. I reported the car as stolen. I locked all my accounts. I froze my credit cards. I sent an email to my lawyer about everything Ben had done. All the loans. All the damage. Everything. And then, as I sat there, waiting for the confirmation of my actions, something in me felt lighter. It wasn't anger that I felt anymore, it was a sense of clarity. I was done. I was done being the ATM. I was done with all of it. This wasn't just about the car, or the money. This was about something deeper. This was about respect. The respect I had earned, the respect they had never given me. The next few hours were a blur of emails, calls, and decisions that were long overdue. But as the minutes ticked by, I felt free. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of their expectations. The consequences didn't hit right away. Ben was too busy enjoying my car to notice. But I knew. I knew things were about to change. And they wouldn't like it. By midnight, I had already taken steps to protect myself. And that was when the calls began. My phone buzzed, my inbox filled with messages. Ben was stranded at a charging station because I had remotely disabled the charging access on the Tesla. Samantha, my sister, was furious with me for overreacting. Mom thought I was tearing the family apart. But for the first time in years, I didn't care. I had made my choice. And nothing would make me go back. I was done being their ATM. This was no longer just about money. This was about my life. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally living it. The fallout didn't take long to hit. By morning, the notifications started flooding in: emails, text messages, phone calls, each one more frantic than the last. Ben was stranded at a charging station, his Tesla dead in the water, unable to charge because I had remotely disabled it. He wasn't laughing anymore. I wasn't sure what hurt more, the fact that they didn't understand why I was doing this, or the fact that they didn't care. Samantha, my sister, was texting me non-stop. "You've gone too far, Jason. Why are you doing this? Ben's not perfect, but his family." My mother called, her voice trembling, asking why I was making everything so difficult. But none of it mattered. It was too late for apologies. It was too late for excuses. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was just done. The truth was, I had been planning this for weeks. Maybe months. I had already started freezing all accounts tied to me, savings, credit cards, even investments. I knew Ben had been draining my finances for years, but now it was time to make sure there was no more easy access. Every loan I had co-signed, every dollar he'd borrowed and never repaid, I was going to make it right. And the only way to do that was to cut ties completely, no matter the cost. I called my lawyer, and we started putting everything in place. The loans, the damage to my properties, the fake business deals, all of it. Every transaction would be documented, every illegal action filed. This was no longer a personal issue. This was a legal battle, and I was done playing nice. Meanwhile, Ben was falling apart. I could feel it. I knew him well enough to see the panic in his eyes when he called me. His voice was sharp, desperate. "Jason, what the hell is going on? You think this is funny? I need that car. I need access to my accounts. You can't just freeze everything." He was frantic, scrambling for control. But it wasn't coming. Not this time. Every call I made, every email I sent, it only made things worse for him. Ben was facing the consequences of his actions, and he couldn't hide anymore. The web of lies and deceit he had spun was unraveling, piece by piece. And the worst part? He didn't even know how deep the hole he'd dug really was. He had always been the one getting bailed out, always the one with an excuse, always the one who could talk his way out of anything. But now? There were no excuses. There were no more empty promises. And the more I saw him struggle, the more I felt empowered. This wasn't just about money anymore, it was about standing up for myself, taking control of my life. For the first time in years, I was free. The emails kept coming in, Ben's business partners were confused, angry, and starting to distance themselves. His creditors were reaching out, demanding payment for loans he had no intention of repaying. And while all of that was happening, I stayed calm, methodical. Every step I took felt like it was finally putting the pieces of my life back together. Ben's desperation was palpable. He tried everything, he even showed up at my office, banging on the door, yelling through the window. "Jason, you're making a huge mistake. You think I'm the problem? You think I'm the one who's wrong here?" But he didn't get it. He was the problem. And now, he was paying the price. I never opened the door. I never answered his calls. I just kept moving forward, watching as his world crumbled. The real revelation came when I dug deeper into his financial history. It wasn't just me he had exploited. There were other families, other victims. Each one was just another chapter in Ben's long, twisted book of scams. And I was about to make sure everyone knew the truth. Jason was no longer the victim. Jason was in control. And nothing, not Ben's lies, not his desperation, could stop what was coming next. The weeks following my decision to sever ties with the family felt like a blur of motion, but it was also a time of clarity. I'd been digging into everything Ben had done, every corner he had tried to hide his tracks. The more I uncovered, the darker it became. I was starting to piece together the full scope of Ben's web of lies. It wasn't just the car or the money he had borrowed. It wasn't just the damages he'd caused to my properties. It was something far worse. Ben had been using my vacation home for years without my knowledge or consent, renting it out as part of his business retreats, which, as I later learned, were nothing but fronts for more of his fraudulent schemes. Each time he held one of these supposed business events, he pocketed the money from the rentals, pretending it was all legitimate. But it was a lie. A lie that had been growing larger with every passing year. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. I uncovered the names of other families, people who, just like me, had been exploited by Ben's charm, by his manipulation. My own sister, Laura, had been taken in by his promises of a better future, using her trust and loyalty as currency. But it wasn't just money he had stolen, it was the very foundation of our family, built on lies and deception. The more I uncovered, the more my blood began to boil. The truth had been there all along, staring me in the face, but I had been too blind to see it until now. And when I found the final piece, the forged documents, the fake contracts, the bank statements that proved he had been using my properties for years, there was no going back. I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. The first person I called was Laura. My sister. The one person I thought would stand by me through everything. I could feel the tension in her voice as soon as she picked up. "Jason, what's going on? I've been hearing things, and you're not answering my calls." I didn't waste any time. I told her everything. Every lie, every scam, every secret Ben had kept hidden from her. At first, she didn't believe me. "Jason, you don't understand. Ben's just confused. He's been trying to do something good for us. He's always wanted the best for this family." But I could hear the doubt creeping in, even through her words. I didn't blame her for being loyal to him, not at first. But this was bigger than her loyalty to Ben, it was about the truth. And the truth was about to come crashing down around all of us. It wasn't long before the rest of the family began to react. At first, there were whispers. Some were in denial, unable to believe that the man they had trusted for so long could be capable of such deceit. Others were angry, furious at the lies that had been fed to them. The division was palpable. Some wanted to protect Ben, to make excuses for him. Others, like my mother, were silent, too scared to confront the truth. But one thing was clear, the family was fractured. Ben's lies were no longer something I had to convince them of, they were standing in front of them, undeniable. And the fallout was just beginning. As the days went by, I couldn't help but feel a quiet satisfaction. I had been patient, waiting for the right moment to expose Ben for who he truly was. And now, that moment had arrived. The magnitude of his actions was unfolding, piece by piece. It was like a slow-motion car crash, the inevitable collision of his lies and their consequences. The truth was too much to ignore, and I wasn't about to let anyone sweep it under the rug again. I watched as the family split, as the loyalties that had held us together for so long began to crumble. And through it all, I stayed calm. I had done what I had to do. There was no turning back now. But the hardest part, the part one hadn't prepared for, was seeing Laura's face when she finally understood. The betrayal in her eyes wasn't just about Ben. It was about me, too. She had trusted him. And now, she was torn between the man she loved and the brother who had always been there. I didn't know if I could ever repair that rift, but for once, I realized that it wasn't about repairing everything. It was about moving forward. And the truth, no matter how painful, was the first step. The family was never going to be the same again. And neither was I. But one thing was certain, Ben's reign of deception was finally over. Ben's world fell apart faster than I could have imagined. The more the investigation progressed, the clearer it became everything he had built, every lie, every fake investment, was crumbling in real time. His assets were seized, his fraudulent businesses shut down, and the authorities moved in. I'd been waiting for this moment, but seeing it happen still carried a weight. The satisfaction of justice felt bittersweet. As Ben's downfall became inevitable, I finalized my legal actions. Every piece of evidence I had carefully documented was now part of the official record. It felt like the last chapter of a long, painful book had finally been written, and there was no going back. The family, as expected, tried to pull us all back together. They called, they sent messages, desperate pleas for reconciliation. They wanted everything to go back to the way it was, to act like nothing had ever happened. But it was too late for that. The damage had been done. The lies Ben had told for so long had already torn through the fabric of our family, leaving nothing but confusion and resentment in its wake. My mother, once so eager to defend him, finally admitted in a quiet, broken voice that she had been wrong. But it was too late. All the apologies in the world couldn't fix what had been shattered. And honestly, I didn't need them. I had done what I needed to do for me, for my own peace. So, I cut the last ties. No more phone calls. No more explanations. As I stood there, watching my family fracture around me, I realized that this was the final step. The past, with all its chaos and hurt, was behind me now. And in front of me was a new chapter, one where I was finally free. Through it all, Emily had been my rock. My fiancée. The one person who had never wavered in her support, the one person who had seen me through the worst of it. As Ben's empire of lies fell to pieces, I realized just how lucky I was to have someone like her by my side. She didn't want to fix the past, she wanted to build a future. And that was enough. Just when I thought it couldn't get worse for Ben, I discovered something even more shocking. He hadn't just scammed me. He'd been living a double life. There were other families, other victims. People who had trusted him, believed in him, just like I had. He had preyed on their kindness, just as he had mine, using their money to fund his lies and fake dreams. When I uncovered the full extent of his manipulation, the final twist made everything fall into place. I realized then that I was never going to get closure from him. I wasn't going to wait around for some apology or explanation. I wasn't even going to give him the satisfaction of knowing how much he had hurt me. So, I let go. I let go of the anger, the resentment, and yes, even the family that had allowed it to go on for so long. I had done what I needed to do to make sure his wrongdoings were exposed, and now, it was time to move on. I looked at Emily, standing next to me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw a future. Not a future weighed down by Ben's shadow, but a future filled with possibility. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had taken control of my life, and for the first time, I felt free. And that was the most powerful thing I could ever feel.